Hi there, it's day 5 of our challenge. It's Lisa Carr with Insight to Potential and the founder of the Parent Leader Tribe. And so, welcome to our very final day of our 5-day challenge. And today we are going to talk about children who are differently abled. And so, I guess the first thing that I want to go into is looking at learning disabilities, followed by looking at children who are on the other end of the spectrum with giftedness or extremely talented, and how eerily similar the strategies are in terms of supporting both of those kinds of children, or the children with those kinds of challenges with their learning. And so here's the really great news. Whether you are gifted, talented, or have a learning disability, there is infinite potential for your child, which is extremely exciting. And as I've mentioned in the last 4 sessions, it all comes down to how well as parents, we can communicate positively and openly with the school, advocate for our child, ensure that we're getting the support that your child needs or that we need for that child, and making sure that we're following through with all of the different recommendations that we receive in order for your child to grow and learn and be successful and independent on their own when they're ready and it's time. And so we'll start off with learning disabilities, and some of the early signs of learning disability. You really have to be careful with this because a lot of it has to do with their developmental progress, and really each child is very, very individual. And while there is an overriding pattern, I guess, which is why they have like ages and stages, which will give you a general idea of where your child should be at in terms of what they can do and what they can't do, whether it's socially, emotionally, academically, right from birth all the way up until their mid-teens. Every child does progress at their own rate. And so you don't want to jump to conclusions too early on, but you do want to keep a close eye on things and monitor the situation as always. But you'll notice that early on, for those children who struggle with language, whether it's reading, writing, or mathematics, that there will be an avoidance of any of those types of activities. They won't necessarily want to read books. They won't want to have any interest in them or don't have any interest in them. They have difficulty remembering words, pronouncing words properly, whereby they miss the softer letters or the letters in the middle of a word. They'll have difficulty with rhyming. They'll also have difficulty with remembering numbers, word sequences, basic concepts, and you'll know that because you'll repeat yourself several times over and over and over again, and they're still not quite catching on. Those could be some early signs of possible learning difficulty. Usually, learning a disability can be confirmed in and around year 7 or year 8 for your child. Great JKSK teachers will be able or should be able to suggest to you that they're starting to see some patterns that are concerning, whether it's not being able to identify alphabet or not being able to recognize or understand or be able to repeat letter sounds, not understanding or picking up on sight words, avoidance of academic tasks in the JKSK. But really in that grade 1, grade 2 area is really where a spotlight is shone on children who struggle with language, because the curriculum really develops at that particular point in time, and the need for them to be able to begin to know all of their letters, to know all of their letter sounds, to recognize numbers, and be able to put all that together to start to make sentences and read simple books. That's part of the requirement. And so teachers will pick up on that pretty quickly, and they should be contacting you. Don't be alarmed if that happens. It just means that they need extra support, and they need to have some things put in place for them in order to succeed in reading. And so can a learning disability, is it passed down from generation to generation or genetically? Yes, there is some evidence that happens. Something that you need to be aware of is that kids are really, really super great at hiding what they don't want you to know. They're super great at masking any kind of deficiency in terms of their reading, and they may have you fooled. You can say, "Oh, my child reads and they're doing such a great job. I don't know what you're talking about. This isn't when we read with our child every night, and they're able to do read back to me." The teachers will give you strategies that you can do differently at home with your child to really help you, so that you can really see what's going on. Kids are fantastic. They can memorize books. They pick up on different things that you wouldn't think they would, but they can look at pictures and kind of pick up on the story and be able to remember things that you've said, and they're relying on their working memory in order to do that, so that but they're not really reading. They're hiding from you, and they're not really reading. And so teachers can give you a variety of strategies that you can try at home to see for yourself if in fact you're questioning what the school is noting as potential learning disability or struggles in that area. When it comes time to actually get a confirmation of whether or not your child has a learning disability, and the same holds true for giftedness or talented, for the talented child, you are going to want to have a professional assessment done. And that professional assessment will be done by a speech and language pathologist, or it will be done by a psychologist who specializes in school psychological assessments. Just be careful that when I talk to you about psychological assessment, it's not psychological in the sense that we're necessarily measuring for any kind of mental ability or mental illness or anything like that. It's really they're measuring their academic ability, and they will be doing a whole host of screenings or tests that they have that measures language and mathematics and numbers and so on, and they'll be able to sort all of that out. A psychological assessment can be more in depth than just measuring the academic piece. They can also do a behavioral assessment. They can do assessment for ADHD. They can do assessments for autism spectrum disorder. They can do assessments for different kinds of disabilities. It's all just dependent on the screening, those first sets of meetings that you have with the child psychologist in order to determine what the best set of tests are. A lot of times it's not just a cut and dry type of learning disability. There's other things that are also happening at the same time. It could be a learning disability and also ADD or ADHD. Which is difficulty with concentration and focus. It could be that there's some behavioral challenges. It could be that there are some other kinds of behavioral challenges that are getting in the way. It could be due to some other things like I have mentioned to you before in terms of traumatic experiences, early experiences that they've had with their hearing and with their vision. And so all of those things, and even with the birthing process, they will ask mom about the birthing process because it's all giving indicators and clues as to what the child is going to need. And a really good psychologist will measure all of the different things they feel are required in order to give the best possible picture of who your child is. And then they will also make recommendations to the school so that the school can implement specific programming for your child in order to give them the highest possibility of success in terms of their learning in the classroom. And so, if the teacher is coming to you with recommendations of or suggestions of difficulty, you may want to start with just some early interveners with some strategies that they want to put in place with support, extra supports with you at home. You may want to ask for that third-party observation. And if in fact there isn't any progress being made, particularly by the end of grade 1, I would suggest to you then it's time that you move towards a formal assessment. In the meantime, you should be looking at also engaging your family doctor to make sure that your child is in good physical, mental health. You want to make sure that the hearing is done. You want to take a look at things like central auditory processing, which is also a different form of hearing testing. You want to take a look at their vision and so on, and make sure that they're in good health. And you want to get all of that done. Can a child with a learning disability be gifted? Absolutely. They may have a dual diagnosis, or they just could be, have a learning disability with giftedness or strengths in other areas outside of your typical reading, writing, and mathematics, and therefore they may be more mechanically inclined. They may be more sporting inclined. They may be very inclined in terms of the creative arts. Boys and girls are equally likely to come upon having, a learning disability. So a group is not higher than the other. So you need to monitor both your male and female children in the exact same way. Is learning disabilities, does that mean dyslexia? Not necessarily. Learning disability and dyslexia are not the same thing. Please know that early on in childhood development, it is absolutely normal for children to have letter reversal, number reversal early on in their development. When children start to get into their middle to late elementary school years and they're still struggling with letter reversals and number reversals and reading from right to left instead of left to right and going the other way in terms of trying to decode words and so on, that's when you really want to perhaps look at a different kind of assessment in terms of being assessed for dyslexia. That in and of itself has a specific way of receiving support in order to unlock or decode the mechanics of reading so that the child can learn how to read with a certain degree of fluency. So, a lot of parents have asked, is a learning disability curable? Once we put all the right strategies in place, can it be cured? The answer to that is no. But please don't despair. I cannot begin to tell you, so I will let you Google that on your own. The number of people who are incredibly successful, wealthy, high achieving, wonderfully contributing members of society who have happy, healthy, productive lives and also have a learning disability. And so it's just a matter of that early intervention. You really don't want to wait. You want to intervene. And again, I mentioned at the end of day 4, where sometimes as a parent it may be difficult to reconcile the fact that your child learns differently than other children. Nobody likes that feeling. Nobody wants to feel like, everybody just wants their child to fit in and belong and be like everybody else. And so there may be some work for you to do, mom and dad, in terms of coming to some reconciliation about who your child is, and that they may in fact have a learning challenge. However, the sooner you can get them help, the sooner you come to that recognition and acceptance of who your child is, the better off your child is going to be in the long run. The longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be, because patterns of behavior, learning patterns and learning styles will have set in, and it's going to be terribly difficult to have to backtrack to the beginning, to the basics, in order to get them what they need in order to be successful. So let's talk about the gifted child. You can identify a gifted or a talented child by a few different things. These children tend to be very strong-willed, strong-minded people. They have very strong feelings from a very early age about certain things of interest to them. They can have extensive or very intensive interests in certain areas or certain political, environmental issues. They can absolutely have behavioral challenges because their level of thoughts and their ability to process higher order thinking and information is at an extensively elevated level, but does not match their emotional level, because that may be at an absolute normal, or what's quote unquote normal for that particular age range, where their cognitive abilities may be off the chart, and their social emotional skills are not there yet. And when they have that disconnect, that's what causes the frustration, and you'll start to see some behavioral challenges there. You may also see social challenges, and those social challenges may come out because there are children of the same age, but again, not at the same cognitive ability, and things that interest them may not interest children at that same age level. And the same can be true, by the way, for children with learning disabilities, where they're having those behavioral challenges because their social and emotional skills are not matching with their cognitive ability, or the same as that with their peers. And so there's those frustrations that build up because there is that disconnect, and therefore you see those behavioral challenges or social challenges that happen as a result. Usually kids with who have a tendency to be gifted or talented in some way, very focused, very curious, ask lots of questions, have difficulty shutting down at night because they want to continue into books, they want to continue into their research, they want to continue into whatever it is that they're interested in, and they don't want to be interrupted. And so you'll see meltdowns, and you'll see different behaviors that come as a result. And so again, teachers can be a great source of information in terms of seeing those elevated strengths in your child, and may have recommendations for you in terms of needing some additional supports in terms of developing their emotional side and their social side as well, and in terms of augmenting programming so that they're not getting bored or frustrated with curriculum at school. Whatever the case may be, your child as well will need an assessment in order to confirm whether or not your child is in the gifted or talented range, so that your psychological feedback will give you a list of items that teachers can use in their classrooms and that you can use, of course, at home as a parent to support your child, and also help them where they're not necessarily meeting up, so that you can close some of those discrepancies and help them to build those social relationships, and have some emotional stability, so that they don't have those behavioral challenges or meeting with frustration. And so helping your child, some strategies that I want to recommend to you is in terms of developing self-awareness and letting your children know, helping them know and understand how their brain works, how they learn differently, helping them know that there's nothing wrong with them, and that they're not weak, there's nothing wrong with them. Their brains learn differently, and that as a result of that, they have to have some special programming put in place in order for them to celebrate their differences, to celebrate their challenges, with different kinds of activities, with different kinds of experiences that we want to expose the children to, and with different learning strategies, so that they are getting the best, so that they can be their best. Certainly teaching them how to advocate and ask for help, whether your child is gifted and bored in the classroom or whether your child is really struggling with the concept. They're going to want to be able to advocate for themselves, and that's where some coaching is going to come into play. Utilizing the computer can be an awesome asset, whether your child has a learning disability or dyslexia or giftedness or is talented. They have a whole host of applications that can be used to support your child in the classroom and at home. In terms of what you're really going to need is you're going to need what's called an IEP, or an individualized education program for your child, so that they can accommodate them, work on some of the deficiencies while supporting them in the areas that they're really good at. And whether your child has a learning disability, dyslexia, or gifted and talented, they all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. And so the beauty of an IEP is really to play to their strengths and to support their weaknesses through whatever academic challenges that are going to be presented by the classroom teacher. And so the concept of an IEP and working your way through that process is really, that's a whole series of live presentations that I could do over an extensive period of time. This is just kind of a starting point for you, and certainly what to do with the psychological assessment, how often you're going to need assessments, how it's going to be beneficial for them once they get into high school, how the IEP helps them once they get into the high school and then into post-secondary education. And yes, children with learning disabilities, children with dyslexia, children who are gifted and are talented certainly have all of the range of possibilities available to them for post-secondary education. And so they are going to need some support. You as parents are going to need some professional guidance in terms of helping you navigate through, in terms of where the IEP comes in place, even as it pertains to post-secondary education, how it can be used, what colleges and universities allow for, and the supports that they can give your child as well, so that they can reach their full potential once they get into post-secondary education. So here we are at the end of day 5, at the end of our day 5 challenge. I want to thank you so much for the dialogue that's happened throughout the course of this week. I hope you enjoyed this small, short series, and I hope out of this day 5 challenge, what I was hoping for you to gain was a little bit more confidence, a little bit more knowledge about the education system, how it relates to your child, and how you can support your child in their learning so that they can reach their full potential. And I hope you also know and understand that I am here for you, the parent, in encouraging you to be the best that you can be as a parent leader in the life of your child. I am always here for you in terms of offering support and coaching, answering any questions that you may have, and certainly available to offer other services to you if you wish to engage on a professional level with some services to guide you through some of those difficult situations that you may run into as a parent, and particularly as it pertains to helping your child move through the school system with confidence and strength and knowledge, so that you too can be successful and in guiding your child so that they can be the best that they can be, and that you can celebrate not only your child's success, but hopefully your success as a parent too. And so I want to thank you for joining me in this 5-day challenge. I can't wait to continue on with Facebook Live. We'll have something up and running for you next week. I can't wait to bring that to you. If you want more information, you can certainly contact me here on Facebook in this group. You can certainly send me a message, or you can contact me at www.insighttopotential.com, where you can gain a whole other host of information, variety of information there, and also some contact forms. And so that's all that I have. I'm going to introduce the winners of our Day 5 challenge probably by tomorrow. And I want to thank you all again for participating, and we'll see you next week for our next live session. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.